Cool. All right, since you're live, I'm just going to get this live on Facebook here just so I can check for the comments. I think I was trying to get all the Astros and Angels fans. They're big on Twitter to follow and see if they had any questions.
Very vocal Astros fans, always, everywhere.
Yeah, absolutely. I've got a good friend who's from Houston. He's actually living in Glasgow, but he is a lawyer over here and like that. There, he's a huge Astros fan, so he's always, anytime the Astros come up in any kind of trouble, he takes his lawyer skills and he said, "Look, everyone's cheating, and we're not the only ones there." And I have a lot of fun with him. So,
I'm like slapping my head here.
Let's see. All right, we should be live. All right, well, we'll go live. Welcome to this episode of Meet the Artist series for the Negro League Baseball Marketplace Art Competition. We have the absolutely amazing Todd Rayam. Todd, how you doing this morning?
I am so well, Jason. Thank you so much. Great to be with you. Good morning here, whatever time it is of the day there.
So it's 2:00 over here. So I've got to finish this interview with you and then go pick up my daughters from school. So I got to do the school run. Brilliant.
Multitasking, but that's good.
We are. So I'm absolutely thrilled. I'm gutted we didn't connect 4 years ago in Edinburgh, as we talked a couple of years ago. But again, you're on holiday, and I definitely have some questions if you sampled the Scottish cuisine while you're out here.
There is a story attached to that. And real quick, Chris Creamer of sportslogos.net, who you might know, he and his wife happened to be traveling to Edinburgh, as my wife and I were exactly then. And so we were together for, a chunk of that trip, kind of like, and it's not a huge place. We were kind of hitting and missing. We met up at a museum. We went to a pub afterwards, blah, blah, blah. But at the end of the day, he tried the haggis. I did not.
You weren't brave enough to try the haggis.
It just never happened. It never happened. He's like, it's like meatloaf. I'm like, give me another whiskey instead. I'll be very happy.
Oh, the whiskeys are there. Did you have a favorite whiskey you tried when you were out here?
I don't even know what it was, but I will tell you, we went to a place called the Bow Bar, B-O-W, and I'm sure you know where it is. And it was just a terrific, seemed like a very local place. I went to the bartender and I said, I want to try something. He said, "What do you like?" I said, "Give me something that, that I would never find anywhere." And he got up on a stepladder and he rummaged around in the back of a cabinet and he's pulling stuff out. And he's like, "You got to try this." I have no idea what it was, but it was wonderful and I really enjoyed it. And we tried a range of stuff. No, it was all quite good. And I will note the fact that, as I've said to you, Jason, it was the middle of December. So basically, for those who are listening that might not be familiar with all of this, it basically starts getting dark at about 2:45 in the afternoon. Am I right?
Yes, it does.
And it was about 12 degrees Fahrenheit with a wicked wind. And so, a little warming fortification at all times was necessary.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's brutal here in the wintertime. We get about 4 hours of daylight. It kind of like lightens up about 9:30 and then definitely about 2:30 it gets dark again. I'm used to it now, but it was a hard, long time there, just not used to it.
Well, it was kind of a nice time to be there because there was the spirit of the holidays was abundant. You kind of felt winter in a very festive atmosphere. And no, it was a great trip. And, like so many places, after having been cooped up in the house for the better part of a year, I want to go back. And I loved Edinburgh, loved Scotland, got up to the Highlands. It was really a very special trip.
Yeah, it's really dramatic up there. You just don't expect that. You head about an hour north and all of a sudden the Highlands roll on and the views are absolutely amazing.
Yeah, we went all the way up to Inverness, did a Loch Ness cruise. Here's a good whiskey thing real quick. We get on one of these, cruise boats and the guy who's giving you the running commentary says, "All right, everybody, we're going to see Nessie today. I guarantee you're going to see Nessie. You're going to have 5 or 6 whiskeys first, but you're going to see Nessie." I didn't have 5 or 6 whiskeys during the trip, did not see Nessie, but it was beautiful scenery and just like I said, epic, really beautiful.
Well, next time you come back, we'll take you down to the Whiskey Society, and we'll try some other pretty epic whiskeys I know down there. And hopefully we can get Tim Godden come join us, because he's a big whiskey fan as well. So I know we've talked whiskeys many times with him.
I would look forward to that.
So Todd, I'm familiar with your story. You're clearly one of the most well-respected sports logo designers in probably the world, I have to say here. Can you tell us a little bit about your story for the UK audience? They might not know you as well. They've definitely seen your work. They might just not know it's yours.
Sure. I mean, the journey begins a long time ago, because I am, I always say I am part of a family of artists. I am a fourth generation artist, and I am one of these people who grew up looking at the world through maybe a little bit of a different lens than most people. And this extended to sports. When I was a kid, way back before the internet even was a glimmer in the eye of, Steve Jobs or whoever it might have been, I found myself looking at sports, and looking at uniforms and logos. And this is at a time, this is in the 1970s, when games weren't, broadcast just everywhere. And so, to give you an example of this, when the Milwaukee Brewers changed their logo in 1978, and I'm looking at you and you've got the Ball and Glove Brewers logo on your hat, you found out about this via a newspaper or via the game of the week or whatever. So moving forward, I've always been fascinated by the optics of sports. I always say that baseball in particular, because of the pace of the game, lends itself to introspection and observation. I went to college, to School of Visual Arts in New York City. I believe it's the best university of the arts in the world. A little biased here, but that's okay. And all this while, I went to ball games, did little baseball road trips with my buddies, went to hockey, basketball games, football games on occasion too. But, baseball in particular, always been a thing. Graduated from college, went into book publishing, designing book covers, cranking out book covers in-house, and doing freelance jobs too. And at that time, there was a preponderance, I would say, of sports books and a lot of baseball books. I developed a portfolio, quite an extensive portfolio with that. And this coincided with a big bang, a moment in time that probably could never be replicated. Number one, I was sort of known for doing these baseball themed projects. Number two, several sports leagues were starting their in-house design and design services departments. Okay. And number three, there was an explosion of licensing at this time, logos being applied to things that, that really, didn't have need to be applied to before. And then just one last thing, there were a ton of expansion teams at this time. And so logos, think about the Marlins and the Rockies in baseball, think about NFL teams, think about all those NBA teams that were coming out then. All of a sudden licensing explodes and there's a need for sports design. Now, at the time, the sports design, quote unquote, industry probably consisted of 5 human beings, of which I was one. So right place, right time, being lucky. And that was 30 years ago, and here we are. So to sum up this very long answer, in the ensuing years, I have created the looks of several Major League Baseball teams, several all-star games from across different sports, including MLB. I did the logo for Super Bowl 38. I created the look of the World Baseball Classic. I work with Ice Cube on his 3-on-3 basketball league, Big Three. Have worked with the NHL. So, a lot of sports design with an emphasis on logos, branding, typography, illustration, lettering, a little bit of everything. That's a long answer, but that's it.
That's a brilliant answer. Listen, I love it. I was going to ask you, is there any sport you haven't done yet?
Well, I have not done anything. I always think, and here we are internationally, right? How cool would it be to get involved with, European soccer in some way, shape, or form? Have never done it. Have never done anything like sumo or, I've done some things years ago for the Olympics, but not necessarily specific sports. Mm-hmm. So, it is it's a big world out there, to say the least. And I would be remiss also if I didn't add to this the fact that I am an author. I have 2 books, my air quotes here, loving homage, as I always say, to some of the most questionable uniforms in the history of Major League Baseball. Winning Ugly, Came out as a hardcover in 2018. It's out paperback now. And Fabric of the Game, the stories behind NHL's logos and uniforms and names. I co-wrote that with my friend Chris Creamer from sportslogos.net, and that is out as we speak.
I'm glad you brought those up because I really wanted to ask you about Winning Ugly, because I love that era of the 70s, and the uniforms were I love them. I can't get enough of them. They were very bold and like that. Was that just something you felt you needed to get down on book for kind of visual identity so people could realize that, there was a time where obviously manufacturing was different. The same thing you kind of saw it in the 70s and then in the 90s with the sublimation, so you could kind of get more to it?
Well, the story behind Winning Ugly, the genesis of it actually begins sitting in the airport lounge at JFK, about to board a flight to Rome. And this was in March or April of 2017. I checked my emails one last time before boarding the flight, and there was an email from the editorial department at the New York Times, wondering if I'd be interested in writing an op-ed piece for the New York Times, Jason, the New York Times, about baseball uniforms in some way, shape, or form. And I said, of course, it would be, a great challenge and an honor. And I kind of honed in on what that theme would be. And it worked out to be really the uniforms of my youth that I grew up looking at, the most expressive, visually arresting era in the history of Major League Baseball, this explosion of color and experimentation. And let's face it, the 70s were the weirdest decade imaginable, and it only made sense that our sports uniforms track that. So, it's about the fabrication of them. Baseball uniforms were liberated from their buttons, in many cases, not all at this point. But again, the desire to market these things in a very aggressive way via color really spoke to me, and obviously near and dear to my heart in terms of the era.
Absolutely. I agree 100%. I was flipping through your book when I was at Tim's house, and you'd sent him an autographed copy. So I need to go get my own copy now. And I think that's a lot to do with it. I think it's a lot of nostalgia for people. Like I started collecting baseball cards. So those era of those cards and seeing those people in there, like there's a lot of those spring training jerseys you don't see very often, and because that's what was on the baseball cards there. So I talked to a lot of people who grew up in the 90s, and they're like, I really like the expansion era ones, and I was like, that was not for me. But it was fun.
Yeah, and you just hit on something that I think is really interesting. And I mentioned the fact that I grew up at a time before an internet, which is really hard to believe with all of us, because we've all got our faces in this device over here 24/7. I am no different than anybody else. But the cards that you reference with jerseys from the year before, spring training jerseys when they came into existence, there was this lag of what things look like, which is unimaginable today. Today, when we have Wander Franco hits a home run in his debut game last night. Guy was born in 2001. We expect to see impressions of that immediately. And we can't imagine a world where a baseball card would have a picture of him from more than a year ago, perhaps. So, that's part of it. And, nostalgia is I always say it's a powerful narcotic. It can be good. It can be bad. When it comes to sports, it can be good unless you get on a high horse and say everything was better in my day, because that's never the case. But yeah, and I think from a design and marketing perspective, and certainly as it relates to cards and collectibles, nostalgia is a great thing.
So actually, I was going to have a question about your design. So you used to do everything by hand. How did the implementation of computers, did that make things much easier for you to get designs done? Because obviously you would have to put something pen on paper and then go show it, probably actually physically mail it to them so you could get the sign off that. Because I asked that because with the estate of the old owner from the Astros had just popped up the great concept designs of what the Astros might be. And again, you would have had to done that and then sent it to them and have it sign off. And I imagine the process must take months.
It was painstaking. There is, you might know this, Jason, there is an exhibition at the Worcester Art Museum in Worcester, Massachusetts now.
Bring that up, yes.
All right, well, then I'll hold off on that and I'll let you bring it up when the time is right. But I do have some of literally hand lettering of the Brewers jersey that you are wearing. We'll talk about that when you're ready. But the process, basically back in those days, I was kind of, it was very arts and crafts cut paste. And, I was a hand letterer. So I was doing hand lettering for advertising agencies, let's say. I was working on blue chip accounts like, American Express and AT&T, and was quite well paid. I mean, which was very nice. But it was a skill that not everybody had. So you would basically literally draw this, build up a drawing, and have this piece of art that was to size that would be sent off to the manufacturer. And to your point, I had a lot of messenger bills back in the early 90s. I had a studio in New York City, in Manhattan, and everything was bigger and it involved more stuff. And the one thing I would add to this would be that it was pretty toxic too, because we used rubber cement and rubber cement thinner and X-Acto knives, very dangerous compared to today. I mean, I could click on a keyboard and do a Command Z to undo something. Couldn't do that then. And it was a process.
Yeah, I imagine it was, and funny enough, I remember that because I actually I bought a messenger bag when I graduated college because that was Seattle, and everyone had messenger bags because everyone just jump on a bike and deliver stuff around there. So I imagine with New York City, it would have been a busy time for you.
Yeah, totally. And I remember this one messenger service that I used, and these guys would be zipping all over Manhattan on bicycles, which is not a very safe thing to be doing. But I remember they had a racing team. The messenger service had a racing team, and now I'm going to be challenged to remember the name of it, but another conversation for another time.
Right. Well, you brought up the Brewers Juicy. Let's talk about the Brewers Juicy.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it was you never forget your first big league project, and the Brewers are the first team I did, and I'm forever indebted to Ann Ossie, who just retired, actually, after having started the creative services department at Major League Baseball. And she took a chance on me back in, this was 1993 for the 1994 season. I was quite young at the time, not so much now, but this was the last project to me that was done by hand like that, right before computerization. And I kind of, didn't want to mess this thing up and didn't want to switch to digitization in the middle of such a critical project. But at the time, the Milwaukee Brewers, still playing in County Stadium, were angling for a new ballpark. It would become Miller Park, the look that I did was kind of a bridge to what they opened that stadium up with. Let's put it that way. And at the time, hard as it is to believe for a lot of people, the ball and glove logo was seen as tired. It was associated with losing baseball teams. The Brewers' last whiff of success had really taken place. Their big moment on the baseball stage, 1982 World Series. They go down fighting in 7 games to the St. Louis Cardinals. And those great Brewers teams of the early 90s, it had been a hot second since they existed. So the ball and glove was dated and needed to be replaced. And it was replaced with what I did and what you're wearing on your jersey.
Absolutely. So was Seelig the owner still then, or was he commissioner of baseball? I'm trying to remember if he was...
he was controlling owner of the ball club at the time. That's right.
Yes. So yeah, I like to remind people he was the owner of the Seattle Pilots before he moved them all there.
That's right. Right. He took the Pilots out of bankruptcy, moved them to Milwaukee on a couple of days' notice, and there they are more than 50 years later.
Yeah, absolutely. So we have a friend of the family who was an accountant for the Brewers, and he had to go and move to Milwaukee because he got his first job out of college was being an accountant for the Brewers, for the Pilots. And when they moved, he's like, okay, well, it looks like I'm going to Milwaukee for a few years.
Yeah, and a little more recently than that, there were a bunch of people who moved from Montreal to to Washington D.C. When the Expos moved to D.C. and became the Nationals, 2004 going into 2005. I just remember hearing these stories and reading about this, and like these people had to get work permits because you're crossing an international border. And when teams shift, and it doesn't happen all too often, think about that and how it potentially upends people's lives. It's pretty amazing.
Actually, I was going to ask you about the Nationals logo. It was a question I had because it came up over in the MLB UK group over here, and people were talking about how Jeffrey Loria killed the Expos. And I said, well, they were going to be contracted there, but so people have been following baseball as long as I had, so I kind of explained the story there. But again, you came up with the Nationals logo, and there wasn't a whole lot of time between that. I mean, they were kind of hopping around from Puerto
Absolutely
Rico
insane.
to Expo.
Yeah, unprecedented time frame. Usually the runway for a new identity for any kind of team, it's about a year and a half. And part of that is, to secure trademark approvals. And, it's a process. Part of that also is to allow retailers to get rid of whatever inventory they have and all of that. Well, a little bit of a different circumstance. But here, in the case of the Expos, there had been rumors. It was pretty well known that they were going to move. There were a series of cities that were explored. But the word on DC really kind of came down the pike during the postseason in 2004. So I always say that I designed what became the Washington Nationals logo on a laptop, and it was a very big laptop in 2004 in a hotel room in Boston during the World Series. Red Sox are playing the Cardinals, and they launched the identity in sometime in the middle of November. So it was pretty insane. And, and part of the process was the fact that the word Nationals does not necessarily easily lend itself to visual identity. What is a national? I mean, if you're designing something for the Brewers, well, we could go with a lot of beer stuff. If you're designing the Cardinals, a cardinal is a bird. It's going to be red. There's no, what is a national? So, it was a little bit evasive, but what a cool project to be involved with.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, so you would have to do it on the fly. So it was really interesting because obviously Cleveland's going to have to rebrand themselves there. And everyone's like, oh, we should just come up with a name. And, the Spiders have been thrown around and a few other names there. And I think most people go, you don't realize there's a process behind it. You said, I imagine a year or two to actually come up with a concept of a name that's going to work. And it's not only just the branding, you said the merchandise. And again, how many logos are around the stadium that are on seats or on the walls that you have to take off?
That's right. You bring up a great point, and that is, now more than ever, let's call it the series of visual assets for a professional sports team, a major professional sports team, it goes well beyond a single logo. And this is the way I always look at it, and I describe it. Imagine a team's visual identity program being a Swiss Army knife, right? So it's got all these useful tools within this very, defined useful tool. And sometimes you may need that corkscrew that's in there, right? It's a cool thing to have in your pocket. And that could be one of your secondary logos. Your primary logo is probably the knife itself. It's the most useful tool within this series of tools. But the way that this stuff is scaled out, literally big, small, it's got to move. It's got to be, painted on grass in the case of baseball or, football or soccer. The number of impressions are astounding. So you really need a robust bunch of stuff that can go along with that. And just last thing on this, your point about infrastructure within a stadium. Yeah, this stuff can get really expensive. There can be thousands of examples of a particular logo on the end caps of seats and, mustard packets. I mean, who knows what it's going to be. But usually there's a transition involved in getting rid of the old and installing the new, and it can take a little while.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we're seeing that with the Washington National Football, or the Washington, what do they call themselves?
The Washington football team. The WFT, which I'm constantly saying WTF to myself inadvertently.
That's I got tied up because all right, don't say it wrong there, because it's one of those things, and people are like, oh well, the season's coming up, I had to come up with a team name, and I know there are licensing issues because there is the squatter with the name rights on there. So I think for most people, like, oh, we can just swap the name, and it's like the minor leagues, you would just come up with something every year and go with that. So no, it's a little bit more complicated than that.
Well, not only that, but I think that that and the Cleveland situation that you referenced are two instances that you want to get this right. And, you want to have something that you're going to want to live with for 100 years, long after we're no longer around. And so there needs to be some disciplined process involved with this, not only for practical purposes in terms of securing a trademark, but like I said, you want to throw something down that is really, it's like building a house. You want to set up a very good, solid foundation that somebody is going to be able to add on to years from now. And that's something that doesn't happen overnight.
No, yeah, that's right. Do you have a name that you are leaning towards that you like? I know the Spiders, there's the Buckeyes, and the Munis seem to be the top three.
Yeah, and I've been very vocal on Twitter, and I could be a little opinionated, but that's who I am. I don't shy away from it. That I don't like spiders. I don't like spiders because this is the name of the worst team in the history of Major League Baseball. They were contracted and booted out of the National League after the 1899 season. Yeah, I know it wasn't necessarily their fault. There's a story attached to that we don't have to get into here. But my thing is why can't we have new things? If spiders reflected Cleveland of 1899, why can't we have something that reflects Cleveland of the year 2022 or whatever it's going to be and beyond? And so I keep coming up with the fact that you've got Lake Erie, this gigantic thing. Dennis Oil Can Boyd, the pitcher for the Boston Red Sox, got rocked one night at old Cleveland Municipal Stadium on the lake. The wind is blowing out. And he said something to the effect of, who the hell would put a Major League Baseball stadium on an ocean anyway? And so you've got this mammoth, heroic thing that exists there and will be there for a long time. So something about Lake Erie seems like it can resonate with me, but we'll see what happens.
We'll see what happens. I think it's gonna be interesting. I'm looking forward to the whole process, and hopefully they're quite transparent about it, because I think I enjoy watching them see what goes in behind it, not just here's our team in there. And I think teams are definitely more transparent these days, so we can actually see the process.
Yeah, I mean, and let's face it, all of us do love storytelling. And in the case of changing a team name, there is a great story attached to this. I would hope that a documentary or books or, some kind of like Hard Knock style TV series, or, it would be great to get a little peek behind the scenes once it all clears. And it's something that a team like that could really leverage to their advantage in a very engaging way.
All right, so we're speaking of team names. So this is bringing me up what I was going to ask you next. So you obviously had your book, was it Fabric of the Game, the stories behind the NHL teams, logos and uniforms. And I wanted to know what your thoughts on the Kraken were, because I said, I've got to follow hockey for a year so I can, because Seattle's my team. So, yeah. So what are your thoughts on the Kraken's design? I'm a fan of it. I like it. So.
Yeah, I love it. I love the name. Like, this is what people wanted. And come on, I mean, you're starting from scratch. The last, there were some discussions about Seattle becoming the Seattle Metropolitans for the team that won the Stanley Cup over 100 years ago. But let's go back to it. Why can't we have new things? Seattle is, to say the least, a very different place now than it was 20 years ago, much less 100 years ago.
When I left 20 years ago, it's completely different again.
Yeah, exactly. So I love Kraken, just the imagery of what this is. There's mythology attached to it. I really like the colors. Hockey is a little bit different from baseball or any other sport in the sense that the crest on the jersey or sweater, for those Canadian friends that are joining us, is everything. I mean, everything spins off of that. So I love the design. I really like the colors. I think it is. Why do I like it? I like it because it is, it is legit and major league. If you want to look at it that way, it does not look minor league, which is a very different mindset. And I think it is something that team can have for 50 years and still look good. No gimmicks.
No. So funny enough, there are a giant octopus just south of Seattle. So there are actually some octopus out that way.
Yeah, I mean, so there you go. I mean, that's a terrifying thing.
Yeah, I have my cousin that's a cold water diver, and she says, yeah, there's a bridge that goes over that spans Tacoma to another part, and there are giant squid there. So I was quite pleased with Kraken. So there is a tie in there. It's not like we chose the Anaheim Ducks, and so.
Right, and yeah, there too. The Mighty Ducks, as they were originally called, really speaks to a certain moment in time and very crass marketing and Disney and all that. And there are fans of the team. Certainly, they've won a Stanley Cup along the way. Blah blah blah. But the Mighty Ducks, they will always be the Mighty Ducks, and they will always be associated with that movie. Whereas the Kraken, I don't know that it's. We look for timelessness in a certain sense, but here we are. I always think like the there is a 10-year-old kid that we're trying to appeal to inevitably, and in 20 years that 10-year-old kid is going to have monetary spending power and might have kids of their own, and they're going to have warm memories probably of what that is. And you mentioned nostalgia, and certainly when it comes to sports design, nostalgia runs in these kind of 20-year waves. So all the fascination for all things 90s right now, I think it's really based upon the cultural presence and purchasing power of people who grew up then.
Absolutely. I think this absolutely. I had this conversation with my friend Graham here, and it's the boom of sports cards again, and just everyone going. I'm stuck at home. I have a lot of free time now, and I really miss collecting those cards back in the day.
Yeah, and sports cards. The moment that sports cards and sports card artists are having right now, to me, is fascinating, and I think it's wonderful because the world needs more people making art. Let's just put it that way. And you got people who have been stuck home for the last year, and things certainly better in some places, more than others. Fingers crossed for the world to get better. But you had people who were home, just like pulling out their arts and crafts and making stuff and thinking about players of the past or looks of the past that they really enjoyed and making new things with it. So I think it's really cool.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. It's been one of those things that's been really inspiring as we did the Negro League the Negro League Baseball Museum fundraiser, and meeting all these artists and hearing their story, and listening how they collected cards as a kid, became an artist because they were inspired by it, and really listening to, let's say, how they got into it. It's a fun time there. I mean, I think growing up, I didn't realize I was being kind of having the sports artist marketed to me, and with your Dick Perez and the Donruss cards, and your Vernon Wells Senior, the Upper Deck.
Yes.
And it was one of those things that those cards were the coolest, and I just never realized that I enjoyed sports art. And it wasn't until I got older to look back and said, you know what, the design's actually more interesting than the player is now.
Yeah, and for me being a little bit older than you, at a time when Topps was the only game in town, those Topps cards of right in my wheelhouse, 74, 75, 76, 77, around there. The designs are great. The uniforms that we talked about are great. The photography is great, and the really feeble attempts at airbrushing logos onto literally airbrushing onto these tiny little pieces of art. It was very inspiring, and cards are usually a gateway to people who are interested not only in collecting, but in a lot of cases, sports graphic designers, because they're very accessible and inexpensive and readily available.
Absolutely. Do you have any cards yourself?
I do. I'm not a huge collector, but for whatever reason, I saved my baseball cards when I was a kid. So I've got a couple of boxes of them, and I'm actually about to give them away to a friend of mine who has young kids, and I have them packed up and ready to go because they are going to absolutely love these things. And my own, I have two daughters who are on their way, not necessarily interested. So it's like, let somebody else enjoy these things.
Absolutely. I do that with my sales here. I've got all my junk era cards, and I throw in about 20 cards for everybody to kind of get hopefully the same enjoyment that I got out of them there. So
it's like a gateway drug.
That's kind of exactly what it is. All right.
In a good way.
Cards. But it's so expensive these days. I don't know if that's really going to work for them. So
yeah. And that's the thing. It's like, a pack of baseball cards, just average, run of the mill baseball cards, used to be and should be cheap. If you're, looking at chase cards, and, it's a long conversation, but clearly Upper Deck changed the whole thing when they came on the scene. And it's almost like you got too many. The market got diluted. We all know the story about this, but at the core, these things have always inspired, and like I said, they're having their moment again, which is really cool.
Yeah, exactly. Cool. So let's talk about your exhibition. This is the first of its kind there. I definitely want to hear about this. So tell me about it. So it's a Worcester, the art exhibition. It's a baseball jerseys as I'll check my notes here. Baseball jersey only exhibition.
And not mine, but the Worcester Art Museum. I mean, this is an art museum. They have, mosaic tiles from Antioch, and they have medieval. This is a legit old school art museum, The curator of this exhibition, Dr. Erin Corrales Diaz, contacted me 2 years ago and out of the blue, and we just hit it off on the phone. We finally met a couple of weeks ago for the first time. But the idea of the baseball jersey being elevated to a position in terms of our culture and significance of it, that it would be in a legit art museum is just astounding to me. So this is all about the history of the baseball jersey. It is about fashion as well. So you'll go in there and you will see some runway fashion. You will see the Elton John Dodger Stadium Swarovski crystal spangled jersey that was worn in the movie Rocket Man from a couple of years ago. There are a couple of DIY things in here. And in addition, you walk in the door and there is a game worn 1908 Boston Red Sox jersey, which absolutely blows my head away.
Wow.
Every time I see it, I've actually held this jersey. It is on loan from the National Baseball Hall of Fame and Museum in Cooperstown. There is same thing, a 1909 Cubs road jersey. And, it tells the story of the jersey and it talks about its cultural significance and eventually how it crossed into popular culture, hip hop, including my friend Ice Cube right there.
I was going to ask you about Ice Cube.
Yep. And so, there's a lot to it. And so anyway, I have two things in this exhibition. My Milwaukee Brewers lettering, which we talked about a little while ago. I still have the original drawings from 1993. Astounding. They are in an actual art museum. And then I created a digital piece which has been applied to a wall there. And it's a series of theoretical jerseys of what a Worcester team would look like over, the course of 140 years. Different baseball uniform styling. Some have collars and some have buttons, some are pullovers, some, lettering changes. But anyway, what a cool thing. It is called the Iconic Jersey. It is up until, I believe, September 12th. So anybody who has an opportunity to go see this, I can't recommend it enough. You'll want to go back.
Cool. Yes. Hopefully, so we get a wide variety. We get the UK audience here, but we also have a lot of people that follow us in the States there. So if you're in the area, I would highly recommend it. I wish I could get over there myself. I absolutely want to see this. So.
Well, they have a terrific catalog, Jason. A beautiful book that is, I'm sitting over here about 10 feet to my left, and it's available online. And actually, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to get up and I'm going to get it and I'm going to hold it up because, why not?
We can do this. Yes.
Okay. Now I'm going to put my headphones back on. Here it is.
Right.
The Iconic Jersey. And it has got a little bit of everything in here. Touches on Negro Leagues. There's a jersey from the All-American Girls Baseball League in here. Hank Aaron's Brewers jersey from his 2 years in Milwaukee. And there it is.
Yep.
Right there. So terrific book. Can't recommend it enough. Available online, certainly in a couple of places. So go get it.
Fantastic. Yeah, we'll publish links to your website and where they can find your books after the show. So people can there. So you bring up Ice Cube. I have to say, what's it like working with Ice Cube? I like the big three concept. Like, this is great. I haven't caught any games yet because they start at midnight my time, and I use all my energy watching baseball.
Yeah. No, it's working with Cube is awesome. The first thing I would say about Cube is that he gets graphic design and design in general, and most people don't realize this. When he was a very young man, before he kind of hit big with NWA, he went to college for one semester, I believe, to study to be an architectural draftsman. Oh, believe it or not. Wow. So when I talk about things like, negative space and use of color, he is one of the keenest observers of visual presentation that I've ever met. And if you think about it, how many concerts has he done over the years? How many movies has he been in? How many arenas has he been to in the course of his life? So he understands the way that light and color play off of objects, and he's a joy to work with. I love it. It's one of my favorite things. And right now we are in the trenches every single day together, getting ready for Big Three. Season 4 took a year off last year, but that tips off on July 10th, and we're in the middle of it all right now, and it's just so much fun to work with him. And as he says, he and I are like peanut butter and jelly.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I imagine he would have had to make, concert flyers himself when they first started out. You don't get big automatically. So I imagine he was probably like the driving force behind that. And you understand the concept of logos, and you say, all the stuff that goes with that. So, there would have been there.
Yeah, totally. He talks about, drawing a logo for his first group when he was a teenager, let's say. And of course, there is a great tradition to this in hip hop and rap music. Chuck D of Public Enemy, who studied graphic design at Adelphi University on Long Island, drew the logo for Public Enemy, this very, iconic symbol, and, drew it at a time. He's a couple of years older than me, at a time when it was very cut and paste. So he gets this stuff. And yeah, there is an intersection of hip hop, rap, graphic design, and, sports uniforms that kind of all mix into this, wonderful, it's pop culture, kind of like shaken up and mixed and rolled out on a table.
Absolutely. Yeah, there is that. Yeah, I mean, I guess when you're growing up in it, you won't notice it. But as you get older, you look back and go, oh, yeah, there actually is all kind of combined together. You just didn't notice it.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, one thing that America has always exported well and will continue to, I suspect, is our popular culture to the rest of the world, including you sitting there in Edinburgh. And, we stopped making certain things a long time ago, but pop culture, we do it well. And, when it comes to the look of professional sports, I think that's an integral piece of that puzzle.
Absolutely. Yeah, we talked about the London series here, and they had quite a few reporters going around London, stopping people wearing Yankees and Red Sox hats. And for the most part, people didn't realize who they were wearing. They just go, oh, it's a New York logo. I like New York. I was there. I did not realize it's actually a Yankees one. So it was quite interesting for, I think, the rest of the world to see that the pop culture, it takes off over here, that they might not know what they're wearing.
I have always been one of these people, probably for obvious reasons, as somebody who loves to travel and as somebody who does what I do for a living. I've always been a keen observer of seeing American sports logos in different contexts in weird places in the world. So a couple of examples. I can remember being at like the Paris flea market, I think, maybe 25 years ago, and seeing bootleg MLB merchandise, including a Minnesota Twins logo on a T-shirt that said California Twins, just because it was cool. And, I've seen people wearing Yankees hats in places like, Bratislava, and certainly in Cuba. Right? Being in Cuba, you're going to say, so what is an NY? Yankee go home. Cuba has a baseball culture, to say the least. But I am constantly just like streetwear. I was in Amsterdam 2 years ago. Right around the corner from my hotel, there is a New Era store, basically. Mm-hmm. With all this Cooperstown collection merchandise. It was like, wow, this is really not surprising, but great logos. You could wear them and not be a fan of a team, and it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, absolutely. I've got a friend over here that's a hat collector from Poland, and he's got over 500 hats, and he doesn't know any of the major league teams. So he's like, the logo is really cool, so I bought it. I didn't know what it is, so I had to go through and explain to everyone all the logos were for him and which team it was. He's like, that's all right. I collect hats, and so he had all the NBA and NFL and MLB, and I said, all right, this is this team, this is this team. He's like, that's just cool. I can match it with my clothes.
Yeah, why not? And again, this is where the kind of stuff that we work on my end, part of it is tapping into these people who really care about their logos, are so passionate about the looks of their teams. They might get tattoos on their body, permanent ink of some of these things. So they care about that. There's a level of scrutiny that exists that is quite different from designing a visual identity for no disrespect to banks or airlines or, coffee houses or whatever.
Cool. So, all right. So we brought you on to talk about your card. So why don't we bring the card up here and we can actually talk about your Josh Gibson card.
Yeah. What a cool thing to be involved with.
Yeah. I was going to say, who got you involved here? Let me see. There you go.
Well, so I had a phone call just not too long, within the last month, as I sometimes do, with Sean Gibson. Sean Gibson is the great grandson of the great Josh Gibson, and you should take a look at what he does, to say the least, if you're not familiar with him. And we were talking, at some point in the call, I said, let me know what I can do if there's anything to help spread the word of getting the Most Valuable Player award named after the great Josh Gibson. And he said, you should, connect with Heavy J and the card community and do a card if you got time. And I said, absolutely, I would love to do that. I got stuff going on, so I can't necessarily commit to producing and selling these things en masse, but I would love to essentially contribute an illustration and design. And so that's what I did. And I saw some, tenuous parallels, but some parallels between the notorious B.I.G. and that iconic image of him with the crown atop his head, this toy crown askew. I think, he and Josh Gibson, by all accounts, two incredibly different people, but greatness. It did, there's a certain swagger. And surrounding Josh with Pittsburgh in the 1930s, 1940s, I was very cognizant of the fact that the Homestead Grays, the team for which he is probably most closely associated, split their schedule for some time between Washington, D.C. and Pittsburgh. But Sean is a Pittsburgh guy. Josh made his nut in Pittsburgh and, was from there. And, as far as I'm concerned, so Pittsburgh it is. And there is what I came up with.
It's fantastic work. And you've already had somebody ask for sale. So unfortunately, it's not for sale.
Yeah, like I said, I think, I wanted to just contribute this image, a fun project, and, didn't want to get into, printing, shipping, fulfillment, not my, not the most wonderful thing in my life. I do it on my own website with some prints and things, but, busy times these days, especially with the big three about to tip off, like I said, in a couple of weeks. So one image to join part of this great assemblage of artists, both professional and amateur, toward this terrific cause. Felt like it was a good contribution to make.
Absolutely there. So your card came out last week. How'd you do? So I know you didn't win. So
I did not.
You did not win. I believe Jamie Thomas won with his card.
And it was a great looking card, and there was a bunch of great looking cards, and I think there's a little something for everybody in there. But the totality of this effort and looking at these things and the diversity of styles and even textures and tactile experience of some of them being actual cards is what makes it really cool. So I'm not one of these participation trophy people, never have been. I will tell you right out of the chute that I have never won an award because I've never applied for anything like that personally. So, I think it's, the idea of the overall project is so cool. And like I said, just some, wonderful pieces of art that tell a story, and hopefully we can all get a little bit of traction, and let's get the MVP name for Josh Gibson because it makes a lot of sense.
Absolutely. I 100% agree. Like I'm really fortunate to be part of this to help push, the push for the MVP and to be named after him. I have to admit, Heavy J, when we came up with the idea, I said, oh yeah, I'll do a card because I did a bit of card work for fun. And your card came out and I said, all right, I'm pulling out of the competition.
Oh, get out of here. Yeah, you should jump back in. I would also say just one quick thing that, I am part of what I do is, I am a baseball historian, a researcher, have been for a very long time. I have this beautiful Tiffany clock that was pretended to be by Major League Baseball. It's sitting off to my right. It's from the All Century team from 1999. It says Todd Radom, designer, baseball historian. So I pride myself on this. And as far as the Negro Leagues are concerned, I met our friend Bob Kendrick from the Negro Leagues Baseball Museum in Kansas City, along with the late Don Motley and the late Buck O'Neill back in the mid 1990s. Met these gentlemen. And so the idea of, I don't want to use the word elevating because I think it's the wrong word, but the idea that the Negro Leagues are now going to be formally included in the pantheon of major leagues, it's obviously long overdue, but, I've always been, like a lot of people who are interested in the history of baseball, intrigued. I want to know more. what the Seam Heads crew is doing in terms of researching these statistics and, properly, it all is part of the story. And getting Josh Gibson's name on the MVP is part of that as well.
Absolutely. The work they're doing is fantastic. I know I used to do my blog 2 years ago and trying to find something out every day about baseball history and share it with the UK audience. So I can't imagine the work they must do. They've got to be digging through articles and I don't know how many libraries they have to contact to get the information.
Well, it's like mining for gold. I actually read this really fascinating thing the other day about how in Erie, Pennsylvania, a couple of these researchers, and it's available online. You can find it, but have struck upon the Erie Library as kind of a linchpin of some missing statistics. And Erie was a place that the Black community was welcome there, close proximity to Cleveland, Ohio, and to Pittsburgh, and you could get from New York to there in a day's drive. And so a lot of games took place there. And weren't necessarily widely publicized, but there was a thriving African-American jazz community there as well. A lot of reasons, but anyway, there are some box scores that exist in the newspaper archives of whatever the Erie newspaper was, and they have struck upon this, and they're gonna like extract this gold from deep in the ground. It's gonna happen. It's happening now. What an amazing thing!
Wow, that's so cool. Oh, I hadn't heard about that. That's awesome. Wow. Cool. All right. Well, I'm going to let you go here because I know you've got a busy schedule here, but I got one last question before I go. I want to know what your opinion is on the Nike Connect jerseys.
Wow, a polarizing thing. And I thank you for bringing this up. So a couple of things. I kind of like, the quote unquote traditionalist in me looks at them and gets all bunchy and pearl clutchy. And then you got to like kind of step away and we talked right at the top about, the era in which I grew up and my love for these experimental looks from the 70s. I can't look at Nike Connect without thinking of that. And you got to let some of this go. There are 162 regular season baseball games a year at the major league level. A team that goes on to win the World Series plays over 180 games for the most part. So we can have maybe, 3 to 5 that look like City Connect. So just in principle, I'm down with it. Now, we could talk about a couple of the specifics. My favorite and the favorite of, it seems to me, a lot of people are the White Sox, right? And why is that? Well, they look like the White Sox. They actually look like the Chicago White Sox, and they've retained the colors. They've expanded upon the Old English badass XOX, that the team has worn for 30 years. And, kind of kicked it up a notch, to use a phrase, right? Yeah. The Marlins are paying homage to the Havana Sugar Kings. Makes all the sense in the world. Love the look of those. They're cool. They kind of look like the Marlins too. There are some of the colors that are in the Marlins regular color palette that have been extended to this. Then we get a little away, right? Because Boston Red Sox, don't look like the Boston Marathon, but it's okay. And I'm a Red Sox fan, so I looked at that and I'm like, okay, this is what I would have done like everybody else in the world, right? I might have put the Red Sox in green for Fenway Green. Maybe that was a little bit too obvious. But anyway, the theme here is that I think we have some allowance for some expression within our very long season. And as long as, these don't become the fish that ate the whale, a la what's happened in the NBA, it's okay.
Yeah. I can't keep up with the NBA jerseys.
No, and part of and I think a lot of people are this way. I don't want to speak for anybody else, but I will catch a highlight on my little tiny device, of an NBA game and say, who the hell are these two teams? Because I don't know where they're playing because there's no home or road anymore. And, I'll see teams in colors that have nothing to do with what they, to see the Denver Nuggets and, kind of, now you're stuffing me into a space that I don't want to be that guy. Yes. But I am looking forward to seeing what some of the more traditional clubs in MLB come up with. The Dodgers and the Giants, I believe, are next up. The Cubs, the Cubs, it was fine. It was kind of yawn-inducing to me. Mm-hmm. But let's face it, Jason, when the Yankees release their City Connect jersey at some time in the next couple of years, there will be like giant, mushroom clouds over the Bronx of all those traditionalists, the team that does not have names on the back of their jerseys. Yes. People are going to flip out no matter what it is. And I'm going to be sitting there with a bowl of popcorn, and maybe a Scottish whiskey, depending upon the time of day, watching.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I'm curious. Like you say, with the traditionalist uniforms, I'm just over now the Nike logo. I can deal with that now. It's taken me a full year to go. Okay, I accept the logo on there. But yeah, when they come up with the Yankees, Dodgers, and Giants, yeah, it's going to be interesting to see the reaction there.
Yeah, and again, it does speak to the fact that, as I always say, there are some franchises that, have license to really blow things up and start from scratch. Thinking about, the younger franchises, the Diamondbacks would be a good example. Padres have always gone back, forth for their 50 plus years. But if the Yankees, the Giants, the Cardinals, the Red Sox, those visual traditions run very deep and are carried forward through generations. And so, a little bit of, I'm sure the topic of sensitivity has been discussed quite a bit. I haven't been in on those discussions. So it allows me to be, like everyone else, somebody with an opinion and maybe even a critic.
Brilliant. Todd, where can everyone find your work?
ToddRadom.com, ToddRadom.com. There's a certain amount of stuff up there. It's kind of like the tip of the iceberg. I am also out there, very vocal on the socials, as you and I are connected. On Twitter, Todd Radom, at Instagram, Todd Radom. A little bit of a different experience in each place. I kind of love the challenge of, I'll just say it, creating content that's going to appeal to very different audiences, but I'm a visual guy. And again, somebody with an opinion. So I enjoy it, and I always love the back and forth. And I love the fact that we found each other this way. And here we are today.
Absolutely. Todd, thank you so much for your time. It's been an absolute pleasure. It's an honor is mine to have you on the show, and this hour has flown by. I would love to go buy you a drink sometime and chat to you all night long. We can definitely have a whiskey soon.
Well, we'll get to the Bow Bar, Jason, but until we can, thank you so much for having me on. Thank you to everybody who's watched, listened along. I appreciate it, and you go get your daughter at school, and I'll get on my work day. But thank you. It's been a lot of fun.
Brilliant. Let me just log us off Facebook here. All right, 2 seconds.